What's going on, everybody? It's the Reformation Keegan, and I'm here today to discuss a really, really good DC story. We're going to be discussing Flashpoint today. So, I also want to read the other Elseworlds Flashpoint that came out about 20 odd years ago, because that one looks really good. I just haven't been able to find it yet and acquire it. But I do have this Flashpoint. So, first of all, the artwork's fantastic. The artwork itself, everything's different, it's unique. It really accentuates the positives of every character, and the covers are fantastic. I even liked a lot of the variants as well. So, give a second. So, like we have like this beautiful one of Cyborg right here, and we have a couple others. Anyway, I want to discuss some things about this story. There's some pros, there's some cons, but I do think that Flashpoint served its purpose, and I think it told, one, a very good narrative, but two, I want to ask you if you think that this was a good launching pad for the New 52. So the New 52 is quite polarizing, but I am a massive fan of the Batman section of New 52. So the arcs were great. Obviously, you had the Court of Owls saga, you had Endgame, Zero Year, etc. But Flashpoint, I think, is a good launch, and I think it's a good launch because you get to see most of the big players that are going to be in this New 52. But the only thing is I never read the Aquaman New 52, so I heard it's really good, but I haven't read it. But I will say this, Jeff Johns' strongest point is characterization, and I think that this version of Aquaman going against Wonder Woman in this war that he's created is fantastic. I would have liked to have seen a bit more of a reason behind the war in this story. And I know there are the tie-ins, and the tie-ins are great, and the one shot of the Reverse Flash is absolutely fantastic. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend doing so. But there's a couple things that I think could have made Flashpoint even better. Don't get me wrong, this story is great. It's good because it serves a purpose. It gives strong connotations to each character and what they're going to bring going forward, along with using past tendencies to relate to their future intentions. So that's a big thing in this narrative, and this is a really good multiverse story that becomes more linear at its conclusion, because sometimes a lot of people don't like the multiverse stories due to the fact that they just get overly convoluted. But I will also be remiss if I don't say this. The characterization of Superman in this one, I would have liked a little bit more, because it seems like the writing for him becomes very abrupt. So you have Superman in this really, really weakened state. He's very skinny, but he can still shoot his heat vision, to fend anybody off, but then he just retreats and goes away, and that's kind of the last we see of him. We don't really see any more of him going forward. So I wonder what the intention was behind that. But I would have liked to have seen more of Superman's story unfold in this. And I will say this as well. Jeff Johns is a fantastic writer, one of the best comic writers of all time. I don't know how long he had to write this, because it was 5 issues, but a lot of the pacing to me seemed a bit rushed. And I don't know if anybody else would agree, but don't get me wrong. This is, again, a fantastic story, and I would read it again and again and again. But looking at it from a writer's point of view, it seemed like a lot of the story was rushed. I thought the first issue was fantastic because you set a really good groundwork, but I found issues 2, 3, and 4 to be rushed, just because I found we were going from one character to another, and we were kind of bouncing back and forth, and we only really got a lot of the background of the Aquaman and Wonder Woman war that was happening, and how England had been taken over, London specifically. I would have liked to have seen even more of that in the main line, because I think it would have given more context to not just an average reader, but to a reader who wants to connect more dots and make more relations. So that's a bit what I would have fixed about it. But like I said, the characterization of Aquaman in this was really good. We got to see Aquaman with a bit of an edge, and a little bit more motivation. Besides being the king and ruler of Atlantis, he gets to be a little bit more than that in this. So if there's any more stories of Aquaman with an edge like this, sign me up. Give me stories to read, recommend whatever you got, because I will read more Aquaman. And Wonder Woman, I obviously love, and there's more intentions behind this because there's a power struggle. So Wonder Woman and Aquaman are two very, very big egos, and, as they would say back in the day, the town's not big enough for both of them. So I like that story that they were telling, but I would have liked to have seen even more of it and more intent behind that. And the same thing with Superman thing. I thought it started off strong to see this really, really weakened and brittle Clark, and then he's, like I said, just retreating. And I get it because he's weakened, but like there wasn't really a big payoff to it. It kind of felt like you gave me a hook and you hooked me, and then you brought me up to the surface, but then you let me go. And that's how I felt as a writer reading this. The other thing is the characterization of Shazam, aka Captain Marvel and the Marvel family. They seemed a bit to the side, and that's very disappointing to me because I found DC's been doing that with the character for a very, very long time, and I think their argument would probably be that he's too close to Superman, which again, I understand. But this character also outdrew Superman quite a bit. So that could either be a receipt for that, when he was with Fawcett, or it could just be because the characters are too similar, even though if you look at their backstories, they're really not that similar at all. Just the visual appearance is pretty similar. But other than that, I mean, I think the character of Captain Marvel has been misused for so long, and it was getting really, really good with Mark Waid and his run on it for the Dawn of DC. But then when Mark Waid left, the character kind of took a bit of a different turn. And then, we have the bigger family with Shazam, and then it kind of gets convoluted again because you have too many characters, and it's kind of like you're trying to place them in a position in the story, but then they don't really fit that position because you're outnumbered. And that happens a lot too when you add too many characters into a story that only needs a few. You end up having too many proverbial cooks in the kitchen. And that happens a lot when you're writing. You have all these ideas for all these characters, and you want to make them work in some way, shape, or form. And even with me, with the comic that I'm currently writing right now, when I was brainstorming, I had ideas for a lot of characters, but then I had to narrow it down, and I told myself, pick 3 to 4 and really work on those characters, because you're going to have your one main character, and then, you're going to have your B character, and then your C character, and even your D character. And then you really want to focus on all those characters and connect them in some way, shape, or form, which I think there was an effort to do that here, but there was just too many. And I think if you were going to include anybody, you probably would just want to include Mary and Billy, and even Freddy. But I probably, for this one, would have went more with Mary and Billy because you already had a lot of other characters in this. Cyborg was good as a leader in this, and then Hal Jordan, he got convoluted, and then there wasn't really much of a payoff for him either. He initially had the bomb and it dropped, and then tragedy ensued, and then it was just kind of left there. So I think the goal was to try to make everything work, but then when you try to make everything work, you have too much to work with, and then you don't have enough limitations. And that's a good thing with constrained writing, because with constrained writing, you have the opportunity to really focus on a couple of characters or a couple of events that are happening, and then narrow it down, narrow your scope, and then make something out of nothing. And that's the beauty of being a writer, especially in comics, is you make something out of nothing. And there was an attempt for this here, but again, I think there was just too many characters to make this work. And I think that's why sometimes some of the bigger stories, they don't fall short, but they don't read as well later on after you read it the first time or two, just because there's too much going on. But if you can connect the dots, that's great. Like Crisis on Infinite Earths, I think, is the greatest example of that, and even Infinite Crisis, where you can have all these characters and you really connect the dots on it. And I'm not saying this story, Flashpoint, didn't do that, but what I'm saying is that there seemed to be more of a focus just on a couple of characters as opposed to everybody, which you have to do, and it's a sacrifice. But when you're trying to, in your writing, make all your characters important and equally as important, but then they're not all featured as such, that's where the disconnect can begin. But it's really good in a way, because then you can focus on a character like Thomas Wayne, which I really, really liked in this, because you could see the differences between him and Bruce, but you can also see a lot of the similarities. So you can see how Thomas is an emotional fighter as Batman, just like how Bruce is, because Bruce will disguise that he's not an emotional fighter, but he is. Especially when you have, characters like Hush or characters like that make things extremely personal with him. And for Thomas, this was personal because he lost Bruce, and the tables were turned. And that's what I liked about this universe. It was almost dystopian in a way, because the tables were turned, and it was an alternate reality that Barry had to live in, where he was seemingly an unknown. and everything seemed to be in, well, reverse. So I like that aspect of it. I thought the intentions of the Reverse Flash were great. I do think, though, that this story could have been expanded a bit more. I think this could have been 10 to 12 issues, personally. And I usually have the less is more approach, but I think for a story like this, you definitely could have added a bit more. Even 10 issues, I think that would have been perfect for this, because then the appearance of Thawne, aka the Reverse Flash, wouldn't have been so abrupt at the end of the fourth issue. So I would have done that personally, but that's just my opinion, and feel free to disagree. But I thought the final issue was fantastic. You had the great fight, and Thawne says that Barry is selfish. So I think that's a question that we could all leave ourselves with: is Barry selfish because he was apparently going to sacrifice the entire world, sacrifice everybody else's life, millions and millions of lives, for just his mother, because he wanted to go back and refix that tragedy that he couldn't fix before? Is that selfish? I'm going to leave that up to you. But I think it raises a good question, because with the story of Barry Allen, the main narrative is getting that redemption. But when does redemption become revenge or vengeance? Is it worth it if you're going to lose everybody? Like, if we think in numbers, is it worth it? Or is or numerical issues not even a factor here? Because we can hypothesize, and we can theorize, but I do think in the end it leaves a big moral dilemma. Because if you look at numerical hypotheticals and you hypothesize and you try to narrow out the pros and cons, Barry's whole life was dedicated to forensics, to find out exactly what happened that night that his mother was killed and his father was wrongfully arrested. And in this story, his father has passed on. So is justice warranted, or is it revenge? And Thawne believes that Barry's selfish because of this. So it comes down to even the 7 deadly sins. Is Barry greedy? Is he envious for that life that he couldn't have before? Is he full of lust for nostalgia? Like there's so, and is he filled with wrath to get back what he couldn't have before? Nostalgia filled again. So it leaves a lot of great questions. But the one thing that I will say that I did nitpick a little bit was the way that Thawne was killed, because Thomas Wayne is different from Bruce Wayne. So values might differ a little bit, but with all that Jeff Johns had the Reverse Flash talking about, that it doesn't matter what Barry Allen does, it doesn't matter how many times he tries to kill the Reverse Flash, he will always be there. In every single timeline, in any single solitary way, he will be there and he's unkillable. But then he gets stabbed right through here, and that's it. That seemed a little bit abrupt. I get it for shock factor, but when you are looking at all the physical capabilities that the Reverse Flash has, why would he get killed that easily? So that's one thing I was wondering. And also, why would with how smart the Reverse Flash is, and he's a genius, why would he have his back turned to anybody? And wouldn't he have the speed to even get away from a lot of things too? So that's just something small. Like wouldn't he be able to sense that somebody was behind him, since he is kind of the master of time in this, and he can change the course of history? Couldn't he just change the course of history and come back anyway? I don't know, but that leaves a lot of questions, and it's not just a criticism, but I also think it's kind of a good thing in a way, because then it left us at the time in 2011 theorizing going forward on exactly what would happen with the character. So let me know what you guys think. This was my interpretation of Flashpoint. I do think it's a really, really good story, though, and it was very entertaining. It was a very easy read, but I'm just being an English major here, and I'm just trying to connect more dots, and I'm probably overseeing things, and I'm probably overthinking it as well. So let me know what you guys think, though. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, because we are really close to 500 subscribers. And if we get to 3,000 watch hours, I could put out more content for you going forward. And don't forget, I will be back with more comic analyses going forward. Currently, I am reading Batman Gotham County Line, which is a 3-issue miniseries, and I'm really liking it so far, and I will probably do a little analysis on that going forward. So stay tuned, and I'll see you soon.